So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, who is Richie Beyer, the County Engineer of Elmore County in Alabama. I won't go into a lot of detail about Richie's bio, and in the interest of getting this session off to a good start, Richie will talk about how local agencies must rely more and more on their ingenuity and cultivate good relationships to get the resources they need to deliver efficient and cost-effective services to the citizens that they serve. So without any further ado, I'll hand you over to Richie.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you for not reading that bio. Well, good morning. I know y'all are all ready to get out of here and head back home. When Larry first asked Todd and I to speak, I was all excited about getting to talk, and the opportunity for, as a NACE past president, to talk about local government and our relationship with the National Center. And then he showed me the time frame, and I was like, well, that's going to be a tough time frame. Everybody's either wanting to go home or everything's been said in the conference. So hopefully we'll not rehash a lot of things, but John brings up a couple good stats right off the beginning. You heard Brian Stacy, our president, speak on Tuesday in the opening sessions, and he threw a few of these facts up here, but counties maintain 45% of our road network in the country. You match that with our cities, and you get to 75% of the road network. And as John mentioned, the traffic levels are a lot less on those roads, but you know, those roads really don't care what the volumes are. They deteriorate just like some of the other roads when they're exposed to the environment. And the people that ride those roads don't care who maintains them. If you're with a state agency, sometimes it may take a while for you to get some feedback from the public, but as a county official, you get instantaneous feedback. We are exposed to that all the time, and our elected officials are, and that's kind of what I want to talk to you about today, is how that parlays into our relationship with the National Center. So I've got a slide up here that shows the inventory in Elmore County, about 1,000 miles of roadway that we have to maintain. And then I show you what our typical road budget is, about $5 million a year, that goes into all our project work, all our maintenance work. It's everything from signs to mowing to patching potholes. And that comes out to about $5,000 per mile of roadway for us. My county's about 80,000, 85,000 in population. So in contrast to what you heard our NACE president speak about, where he's got about 850,000 people, the resource set is a lot different for the two of us. But I would say that I'm probably in a category where I'm still in the upper third of counties across this country. Most of the counties in this country, when you look at our NACE statistics, are in the population range 50,000 and less. So the slide I'm showing you here is strictly for comparison between me and my DOT, because I know my DOT needs money just like we do, but I show you this for some perspective, because I think a lot of times local government has shown that there's not a lot of resources there, but I don't really think anybody understands the actual impact of that. If you look at what our state DOT has to operate with over the last few annual reports that they've produced, they've got a little less than 11,000 miles of roadway, about $2 billion per year in their total budget, and that's about 180,000 per mile. So if you just look strictly mile to mile, that's 36 times less resources that I have as a local government to perform than what they do. And again, I know they have completely different problems. This isn't aimed at comparing who needs money more. What this is aimed at is showing you the perspective of what the problem is. And if you were to just say all the state roads were 4-lane and all my roads were 2-lane, and which is very conservative to say that, you're still at 18 times, almost 20 times more resources. So if you're a state agency in here, or you're FHWA, and you're hearing from locals, this is the perspective that we're coming from. This is why we're struggling to find treatments. This is why we're one thing John said is sometimes the locals aren't as advanced, but I'd argue that sometimes the locals are the ones out there trying things before other agencies just because we have to do it to survive. I mean, as a good example, that $5,000 per mile that I have to operate with, if I spend nothing but local money to resurface a mile of roadway and I put hot mix asphalt down, it's been averaging us about $80,000 a mile with our local money. Don't touch any federal money in there. If you do that, the cost goes up almost double. So my decision every day is trying to get my commissioners to understand is if I'm going to do 1 mile of resurfacing based on these resources, there's 15 miles of roadway somewhere else that I have to ignore in my network. So that's why it's so important for us if we can find a chip seal alternative or a microsurfacing or a cape seal or fog seal where I can lower that ratio instead of 16-to-1 trade in, where I can get down to 6-to-1 or 4-to-1, or in the case of some of the fog applications that we're trying to do, get down inside that 1-to-1 ratio. Because I can't just abandon all my other operations. I can't just not mow the right-of-ways or not change signs out. I got to fit all that in. So that's really the point of this slide, is just to give you some perspective and to understand that when you're talking to the local governments, sometimes it's not that we don't have the knowledge or the expertise to do stuff. Sometimes it's just we surely don't have the resources to do it, may not have the manpower to do it. So here's a good example of what we've done in Elmore County, just to show you how when we shifted to the preservation treatments and started back in the 07, 08 time frame. I arrived in this county in 2003. We had about 45% of our network when we grade our roads. We grade on a 2-year cycle, visual inspection. It's very basic. It's a database that we put everything in, but it's in a format where our elected officials understand it. It's on a scale of 100. They understand if it's below 70, it's failing. If it's above 70 but below 80, you know, just tied to typical academics. They understand that. The public understands that. We were at 45% of our network that was above 80 at that point in time. Through instituting different pavement preservation methodologies and having the buy-in from those elected officials, in the 12 cycles that we've been through, we flipped that to where we're almost at 80%. We're at 79% right now. But the most important fact on there is that we reduced our roads below 70 during that process by 58% of the mileage that was existing 12 years ago. So do I have all my problems solved? No, but we're headed in the right direction, and those elected officials see that and buy into it. And we use a ton of different applications to get those things done. But this slide right here showing all the applications we do, everything from FDR in-house to chip seals, fog seals, microsurfacing, cape. All those are our tools, as you've heard throughout the week and for the last decade or so. Those are just tools in our toolbox to be able to do things. But none of that stuff would even be relevant if our county would not have been plugged in at the national level with NACE and then been brought along with the National Center. See, the reason that Brian Stacy spoke to you the other day was to talk about how valuable that partnership is for us, because I got involved with Larry at a NACE conference and learned some of these techniques, and then met many of you in this room and many that have already left, and then talked with people in the industry, and that's what drove what we're doing in Elmore County. But none of that would have been possible if we wouldn't have had the exposure to the National Center. So as a local government, most of the people that we deal with seldom get outside their county boundary, much less their state boundary. So being able to take that information, you're going to hear from Todd Kinney here in a minute with NACE about how we're trying to filter that down to our members. Whether it's the way that different counties are going about collecting the data and analyzing the data, or the treatments. But it's very important. And I also have the benefit of sitting about an hour away from NCAT, to where, you know, we get to take a lot of advantage from the research that's being done over there. And so that synergy between the National Center, NCAT, Minroads is key for us. I mean, you saw at $5,000 per mile, I don't have any research money. I can't do anything to entice anybody. I heard some discussion in the partnership this morning the Southeast Partnership about the budget and all that. You know, our county, even though we're better off than most, we couldn't do anything to financially contribute to that. So we have to be able to do other things to contribute. And in a lot of cases, we're the testing grounds for some of these techniques when we're talking about low volume roads and low speed roads. So here is the board. Many of you know this, but I've got the distinct honor of being the only local on that board. I was fortunate enough when Mr. John Rice, who's now with the center, retired back in the 2012-2013 timeframe. I was appointed as the NACE rep, and I think that's pretty unique. You may ask why there's not a city rep, and there probably could be a city rep on there, but for agencies to understand how counties interact with municipalities, for the most part, I have 8 municipalities in my county. If they have some technical question, before they even go to DOT, their elected officials and their staff are calling us about how we do things and how we help them. So we try to help transfer that data down. So I think it's very important for us, and we're very, very grateful for the relationship we have there, and we hope it continues to grow. And the way it can grow, I think, and why it's important to us are several of these bullet points up here. It's a resourcing and sharing platform. It's associated with an accredited university. So any of you that deal with elected officials, if they have to go through any kind of training program or they hear about you going through a training program, if it's associated with a university, all of a sudden it's magically so much better than anybody else's training program. And so the center being tied to Michigan State gives it a lot of credibility, just like NCAT being tied to Auburn University does. It also gives us what I view as a contract neutral area to have conversations. Even though you saw many of those representatives are industry reps, and we get a lot of resources from the industry, as a local government entity, we get chastised sometimes for just doing what the industry is suggesting to us. And this gives us a realm to be able to have interaction where we can filter through what the industry is doing to just quote unquote try to make money versus what is best for the public. And I think the industry for the most part is trying to do what's best for the public, but there's a bias out there and you have to be aware of that. There's many other items on here, but the one other thing I wanted to talk about that I think that our partnership with the center is going to do is this certification process. Many of you sat in the sessions the other day and heard about the agency and contractor certifications. I think both of them are great. I'm of the opinion that the agency training is so important because even if you have a contractor that can give the contracting world a bad name and harm pavement preservation in your state, or in my case, in my county, I can nip that in the bud by having people that are trained and know what they're doing. And so we're trying right now to work with the center and figure out good ways to be able to provide the training. And right now we're looking at one of the opportunities would be the NACE conference that comes up in April. But part of our issue as locals, you saw our resource set, we can't just all travel all over the place. So we have to figure out ways to do it to where it's either regionally based or the idea that Larry had the other day when he was talking about using local universities for some of the DOTs to train. That's what we're after, that and the LTAP centers. So, I can't stress how important that is because of the relationship. I was disappointed to see, and I'll go back a slide if I can. We still have a vacancy from Federal Highways, so the reps that are here with Federal Highways in the different regions, I hope that you go back and report to headquarters that we really need somebody that's actively serving with the center, helping get this information out. And I know that FHWA has a lot of good stuff on their website, but this synergy here can do a lot for locals and for state government, and it's the right forum to do it, especially when we're talking about all these technologies and techniques becoming advancing so fast that we can't even keep up with the research realm of it. So I think it's very important for that. So with that said, I've got to run so I can get to the other end of my state, south end of my state, to see my 2 high school daughters this evening. John, can I take a few questions?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
If there are any questions, or if I didn't bore everybody because you're ready to go get your flight. Yes, sir.
Hey, Richie, some of your FDR in-house. Do you guys own a reclamator, or do you rent one, or are you contracting that portion of it out?
I have the top center slide. I have two apparatuses called asphalt zippers. I have one that's a 30-inch model, and I have one that is a 6-foot model.
Great tool.
And we use, depending on the type work that we're doing, we do what I call maintenance reclamation, or we call it zipping. And we use cement stabilization and do that all the time. So some of those roads and those lower categories I was showing you, we went in and fixed isolated base failures, cement stabilized, put a surface treatment on top of those, strip patch those areas, and then we come back with a cape seal over everything and make a very good road. So
Thank you.
we've been doing that for about since '06, I think. So
I don't know if this is a loaded question. Being from Canada, we did this in our province where we had small counties like yours that the provincial ministry forced them to amalgamate. So where you had 4 or 5 counties, now you had 1. I don't know, is that an option in Alabama or the U.S., or has that been explored for how it can benefit?
you take 4 counties and 4 sets of elected officials and tell them that you're going to combine them into 4, I'll let you have that conversation with them.
That's a lot.
I'm not being facetious, but I mean, it's very difficult to have any. I mean, even in our county with 8 municipalities, we've talked about centralizing some of the maintenance for the local governments, and there's too much of the territorialism of, what is this city council going to lose? What is the county commission going to lose? So I understand the methodology, and what we're trying to do in Alabama is try to have more regional cooperation between the counties, to where I and 3 other counties around me may run chip seal operations together, and I may put 2 or 3 pieces of equipment and employees out there, and another county do the same. And when it's chip sealing season, we run that operation through that 3 or 4 county area. There's several of our counties that are doing stuff like that, and I think that's probably about as close as you're going to get. But yeah, I don't think we'd be able to dissolve. We got 67 counties. I don't think we'll get to 20 or something like that. But the regional concept, we bid things that way. We do a lot of partnerships, helping each other out. So we have 5 new regions in our state that our DOT is reorganized to, and I think you'll see more and more of that as we continue to get to the point where we're not as lucky as Georgia. We've been talking about road revenue, but it doesn't look like there's anything in sight for us, so we're going to have to keep squeezing. So good question, though. Anything else? Well, thank y'all very much for the opportunity to speak. Thank you.